right, welcome back for another episode of Sneaky Keys. This is my spiritual successor to Hidden Gems, where I'm talking about those books that may be worth a little bit more than you might expect. Some oddball stuff, some weird books, some things you might not be aware of, or some things you might have even been aware of before but have forgotten about. So I just kind of want to remind you where there could be some treasures still buried out in those boxes when you're out there digging. That's off the beaten path type stuff that you should keep an eye on, because like I said, they're worth a little bit more than you actually might expect. Now, with that all said, hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see this week's group of books, just hang on for a few seconds after the intro, and I will be right back. All right, so we're going to start off with what has kind of been a staple so far in this series, where I keep giving you a group, at least, of some second printings or later printings that you should be aware of. Because again, these things find their way sneakily into your boxes, and they're just out there floating around, mixed in with everything else. And some of these things are worth a few extra pennies than, like I said, you might expect. So we are going to start off this week's episode with some more second prints. And again, I'm going to cover some Daredevil second prints. I know I covered a group of them a couple months ago now, but there are plenty more that you should be aware of. More specifically, I'm going to focus in on the arrow right around Shadowland, which again is something I really hope that they adapt. Maybe we get there. I don't know what direction exactly they're going with Daredevil season 2, but again, with the Kingpin and the hand stuff, I really wish we would go this route, because I think it would play out awesome on the small screen or the large screen. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. I still enjoyed the TV series there on Disney Plus, or enjoyed the series on Disney Plus. So I'm excited to see where they go from here. But before we get into that, or leaving that aside, let's get into these books that I was going to talk about today, which are some second printings that you should be aware of. Starting off first with this guy right here. So we're going to start off with Daredevil number 10. This is a second print. You got Elektra there coming back. I like the little Ben-Day dot look you got there in the sky. Gives it that kind of old school classic feel from the old school, comics as they were printed with the dot coloring. And again, this starting us off, warming us up. This is not going to make you rich. If you find this in a box, you may find it, selling for about $5 to $10, which I know it's not, again, going to make you rich. But if you find it for $1 or $2, it's a nice little flip, nice little turn. Because average listings are right around that $10 mark for now. Again, not a huge deal, but still, a $10 book, you probably weren't aware that was a $10 book. Sure, cover price is $4, but still, it's worth a few bucks more than you might have expected. So, again, that's just to warm us up. This was, again, part of that Zdarsky run. Fornes doing the art, who has really been taking off with some of these covers lately. But that is our first one. And now we'll get into those Shadowland books that I had mentioned, as we're going to start off here with this first one, issue 508. So going back to that original numbering for Daredevil, issue 508, we've got the Shadowland kind of kicking off in here. We've got the black suit Daredevil that everybody was expecting. That was going to be the suit that was going to be on the Disney Plus show. So these things got a little bit of a bump last year or so, as people were looking forward to the Disney Plus show. But it turned out not to be the case, as we got more of the classic look for the show. But still, this particular second printing, issue 508, average sales, $30 to $60. So again, something you should be aware of, because that's a nice little bit of money there that you can find if you can dig one of these out of a box. Granted, listings could look for a little bit less, because you may not get the crispiest of copies out there. Keep that in mind as well. Make sure you look at all the pictures if you're buying online. But I'm not telling you to buy online. I'm telling you to buy local. Dig in a box. See what you can find. See what you find at your shop, yard sales, flea markets, wherever you're doing your comic hunting. Whether you go on vacation, you stumble across a shop, whatever. This is the type of stuff I think you should be looking for and be aware of. Because again, this is the stuff that gets forgotten about. Lost in the shuffle. Lost in the sauce. But average listings are still $20 to $50. So you can find yourself somewhere in that range. As you can see, the average sales and the average listings. I'm giving you information so you can make the call for yourself what you want to do, because I have no idea what you might find this for. You might find this in the shop and it's listed $40. I'm not saying you buy it for $40, but now you know the data to back it up of, is this a good deal or not? Or you find this in a shop and it's $10. Maybe you make a different call than at 40. Maybe it's only 5. Maybe it's less. Maybe it's in the dollar bin. I don't know. That's the idea behind why I'm doing this. But just for your sake, in case you were curious, high ask for this, $150. Again, that's an asking price. That's not a sale price, but somebody is fishing for $150 for one of these. And I think as far as context goes, if you have one and you have one listed, yeah, that's the high end mark that you would be battling. So just keep that in mind as well. With that, we're going to move on to the next issue, and one of my favorites. This kind of gives a nice little callback to the reverse characters, if you will, when Daredevil was hugging Elektra's tombstone from back in the Frank Miller run. So I kind of like this flip-flopped edition here with the second printing on 509. One I always look for when I get excited when I find it, because like I said, it's a cool cover and it gets you a few bucks. And more specifically, this sells for around 20 to 30 right now. It used to hit more like 50 back in the day, but 20 to 30 is still a good amount for a second printing. Meanwhile, listings are on the cheaper side, as you can find some $10 listings out there. But again, on the higher end right now, it's 30. It used to be a bit more. Now it's on a little bit of a dip. Who knows if it ever bounces back? We assume we will get Elektra again at some point on the small screen or large screen. So, hey, who knows? With that said, sticking with the run, we're not moving on yet because we've got the next issue. We had 508, that was 509. So let's get to 510. And this is one that often gets overlooked because, quite frankly, there's not even a lot of images out there. You can't find this image in a lot of places. Some places don't even list this book as even existing, but it does. This is the second print for 510. You got Iron Fist, you got Luke Cage there, Heroes for Hire, squaring off against Elektra. Pretty cool book. Another second print to keep an eye out for. But since it gets overlooked often, this one's a little bit cheaper right now. This one's only selling for about $15 these days. And the listings, more like 15 to 25. Still kind of in the same ballpark, but as you saw, diminishing returns on these last three books with the Shadowland second prints. But still, all worth looking for and being aware of. And those are the four that I have for these Daredevil second prints. But as you guys know, I usually like to give you one extra. So here's another one to watch. Something else to keep an eye out for. And in this case, it's actually kind of three to watch. But with that said, we do have another second printing here for Shadowland #1. So Shadowland, in and of itself, apart from carrying over through the Daredevil book, also had a standalone series of its own, as well as some other miniseries spinoffs, too. We had the Moon Knight one. I think it was a Punisher one even. But second printing wise, we have this black suited Daredevil going at it, stabbing Bullseye, a la how Bullseye did Elektra back in the day. This book, along with the other version of it, and I say other version because there are two covers for this second print, both can be found anywhere in the $15 to $40 range. While this one is the one where the white cover kind of jumps out at you, most people kind of favor the next one because of all of the characters. I don't know. Maybe it's just because there's a bunch of hand ninjas on it. I don't know, because they both got the black suit on it. But here's the other second printing that you should be aware of, because there you go. It's got, it's got Daredevil going there with his black suit. You got some hand ninjas, but it's also the second printing for Shadowland #1. Two versions. Well before its time, because now we're getting that all the time, especially out of the Energon universe, doing the duo second prints all the time. But listings for either could be found right around that $20 mark. So keep that in mind as well. And while we're at it, and while we're talking about Shadowland #1, don't sleep on the Ben Oliver third printing, because yes, there is a third printing for this one as well. It doesn't do as well as the second printings, but it is still a pretty cool cover and one that you might want to keep an eye out for. And those sets of the other two covers together go for about $30 to $50. So keep that in mind as well. So while average listings are about 20 a piece, 30 to 50, you might find the pair together for out there if you go shopping online for it. Now, before we move on to our next group of books and our next little segment, I want to remind any of you out there who need supplies, use my code RENA10 to save yourself 10% off over at BCW. Get your bags, your boards, your long boxes, your short boxes, your CGC boxes, top loaders, basically anything to keep your comics and collectibles safe. Use my code RENA10 to save 10% off your entire order. You get a discount on what you're buying. You help out the channel. You really got nothing to lose. So, with that said, and speaking of the Energon universe, we're going to go old school G.I. Joe for our next segment and take a look at a little bit of a crossover. Again, this crossover at one time got a little bit of a bump because of that last Transformers movie, because we had that little bit of a tease for G.I. Joe coming as well. So a crossover between projects, G.I. Joe and Transformers, is promised. It is promised. It's supposed to be on the way. When we'll get it, I'm not sure. But We already got it in the comics a few times, but here is the first crossover that I remember in the original G.I. Joe run when the title was struggling so much, they basically just called G.I. Joe Snake Eyes. They said, you know what? We're going to lean on our big guy. We're just going to call the run Snake Eyes. G.I. Joe starring Snake Eyes and the Transformers. So here we go. Transformers Generation 2 at the time. We're starting off with issue 139. For all you G.I. Joe collectors out there, you know the series ended at 155. Not too long after this. So this is near the end of the run, and basically anything from this point on, if you find it cheap enough, is probably worth just grabbing and stashing, because the later run issues here with G.I. Joe can do pretty well for you, anywhere in this range from 139 all the way up to the end at 155. So again, just helpful information. But specifically, we're going to look at this crossover with the Transformers and tell you that, yeah, this is a book that sells for like 10 to 20 bucks. There'll be newsstands out there. People will try to sell newsstands. It's more, it's harder to find. And that might be a little bit true at this time, but it's not like it is today. Like newsstands in the 2000s are much harder to come by than they were in the 90s and the 80s before that. So keep that all in mind as well. But still, 10 to 20 bucks is what you're looking at as far as what this book particularly sells for, while listings are actually seeking a bit more, 20 to 40. So kicking off this crossover event with Megatron and Cobra Commander, 20 to 40 bucks is what a lot of people are asking for. So keep that in mind as well. As this extra little note that CGC 9.8s are listed for 300 to 380 bucks for this. Yeah, 300 to 380 for a 9.8. So if you find yourself a nice crispy copy out there, maybe you should get that graded, and maybe you can join this 300 club here, because again, those are asking prices, listing prices, but still interesting, right? With that, that's our first book, our first one of this run. And, as we do, we're going to continue on with the rest of it. It is a 4-part series, after all. So our next issue is 140. Again, Megatron, Cobra Commander. This is when they made Megatron like a purple and green tank. Like they went Lex Luthor colors and getting away from that silver, silver handgun that he used to be, and made a more different look in this Generation 2. But nonetheless, issue 140, much like the last book, average sales 10 to 15 bucks. Again, you're not going to get rich, but that's kind of what it's selling for, with listings more 10 to 25 ballpark. Still not bad. If you can find this in a cheap box, couple of bucks, $3, $4, whatever it might be worth a grab for those prices. So just something to keep an eye on as you're out there digging. If you can find this whole 4-issue run, you did well for yourself. As newsstands, as I mentioned, people get excited for finding newsstands. A newsstand raw of this sold for $45. So if you do find newsstand versions, you may be able to get yourself a nice little premium on top of the numbers I'm giving you on average. So keep that in mind. Right or wrong, people like collecting newsstands. With that said, those are our first 2 parts. So let's get to the next part, which is the next issue, 141. Here we got some more of the Ninja Force and Snake Eyes mixing it up in here. So with that, another book. Sells for about 10 to 20 bucks. A little bit more on the asking prices, though, as askings can be more 15 up to 40 for this particular issue as we get, again, closer to that end of the run. Meanwhile, 9.8 listed at 165. So much lower 9.8 here for this book than that first one. But hey, again, those are asking prices. What this will actually sell for, that's a different story. I'm just giving you some information. Do with it what you will. That will take us to our final part in this run. That final issue, what was that? It was 141. So we got 142 left here. Once again, purple and green, Megatron, about to stomp on a really weirdly drawn Scarlet. Yeah, that is just not good. And we got Zatanna back there. This wasn't the best run. Let's just say. I mean, G.I. Joe ending, the art wasn't the best near the end here, to be fair. But with that said, final issue of this crossover event, 10 to 15 bucks, kind of in the same ballpark as the others. And just like the last issue, asking prices 15 to 40. So again, you might do well, especially if you find a newsstand, because here we go. A newsstand raw sold for 56 bucks for this particular one. So again, you see that extra premium you get for a newsstand. If you get them at night, especially if they're in good shape, you might get a few extra bucks if you find one of these out there. Now, with that, this next one to watch is completely off the reservation expensive. I will freely admit that. But I love this book. I still need to find one. I'm still on the hunt for one because I don't want to pay these prices because this is a very pricey book. So while I have this listed as one to watch, this isn't like a sneaky investment in, that I'm trying to recommend to you. I'm telling you, this book is already expensive. But that said, it could get even more expensive as time goes on because it is not that easy to track down. And a lot of people like it. And that is the G.I. Joe special. So this special, which is an homage to McFarlane's Spider-Man, obviously, as you can see it, with Snake Eyes on the cover. Who doesn't want this book, right? That said, I want it, but I don't want to pay $200 to $300, which is what this thing sells for. That's right, $200 to $300. I was looking at one at a convention a year or two ago. I think it was a lower grade. It was like an 8.5, and they wanted like I think 100 or 150. I was even considering that just to get a copy, even though it wasn't the highest grade, just because I kind of wanted one. But even then, I think I balked. Or maybe it was more than that. I can't remember. That might have been my price that I was willing to pay for it, and they might have been asking much more. But point being, haven't found one that I'm willing to part my money with at the right price yet. But with that said, keep this also in the context. Average sales, $200 to $300. Condition, obviously, better condition, better prices. But look at this. I mean, there's a listing out there right now. I think when I last looked, there's one listed for $275, and it's only at fine. That's a mid-grade at best. $275 they want for that. Why do they want $275 for a mid-grade? Well, as I said, it's a hard to find book to begin with. And if you did have a 9.8, well, a 9.8, they're $800 plus. So, put that into context. If you find yourself a really nice copy, you're inching up on $1,000 at some point, I think, at this point. I would not be surprised to find this be a $1,000 book in a 9.8 in the next couple of years. So, it's just one of those things. Now, with that said, I got one more segment to go, one more chunk of books to talk about. But before we get there, Whatnot. If you guys still haven't tried Whatnot, give it a shot. Use my link down below. Sign up. Get $15 off your first purchase. That's $15 to spend on whatever you want with whomever you want just to give it a try. Live online auctions going right there, selling you comics and all kinds of other stuff. Again, you can use that $15 or whatever you want. I'm a comic guy, so I focus in on the comics. But there's a lot of stuff on there. You also have buy it now type stuff. Go take a look. If you haven't tried it already, $15. Sign up to give it a shot. Once again, you help out the channel. You get yourself a few bucks to spend on something. What do you got to lose? So, with that said, our final segment is going to look in on Afterlife with Archie. Yeah. Kind of felt topical with Wednesday coming back this week. I still got to check that out, by the way. But with Wednesday, you get more of that horror kind of angle and the fun kind of kids books, if you will. And that's kind of what they did with Afterlife with Archie. They took those family-friendly Archie cats and put them all in a zombie story, basically. And with that, they did some pretty fun covers, specifically some of the B covers, the variants. And a couple of those are the ones I want to talk about, and a couple of the A covers as well. But near the end of the run, it didn't last long. I think it was only like 12 issues or so, maybe 13 for the entire run. But here are a couple of highlights that I always look for. Once again, when I'm out there digging, these are like cardstock type covers, so they're a little thicker, they're a little sturdier. But here we go. Afterlife with Archie, number 5. Yeah, it's Veronica. She's in a nightie. It is what it is. Gooner's gonna goon, right? Hey, I don't know. I like collecting this stuff too. It's fun. That said, number 5 here for Afterlife with Archie. This particular B cover with Veronica there. You find them selling easily for $10 to $15. And like I said, you find this in a cheap box, a couple of bucks. You dig it in those kids' boxes with all the Archie books. Because the Afterlife stuff finds their way in with the regular Archie stuff too. So go make sure you dig in those kid boxes. those right at the front of the shop when they might have it buried underneath the t-shirts or whatever extra stuff they're selling. Yeah, go look. You never know what you might find. You might find some Animaniacs type stuff, some Afterlife with Archie. Who knows? Find some good stuff. But with that said, $10 to $15 is what this sells for, while listings are more $10 to $30. Yeah, 30 might be fishing for a little bit of higher money, but this can sometimes get it, especially if you have it in a nice shape. Because as I mentioned, this being stored with the kids' books, those kid books get beat to hell. So a lot of these, even with that thicker cardstock cover, could get a lot of spine creases and ticks and bends that will not come out, no matter what you try to do with the pressing. Just saying. But with that said, one more note, 9.8 sold for about $100, just for context. So for this particular issue, $100 for this number 5 variant cover. So that's our first one. Next up, we're going to jump to what is this, issue 6? So next in the run, not as cheesecakey, if you will, as running around in the 90, but we do have still a bit of a scantily clad witch here, as we're looking at. I'm assuming this is Sabrina doing her witch thing on the B cover. Again, you see it says variant on the cover. It's not an incentive variant. It's basically just the sub cover, the B cover. So with that, another 10 to 15 bucks is kind of what this thing sells for. But asking prices are a little higher on this one. They're looking more 20 to 50. So again, keep an eye out for this. Dig in a box. The regular ones do okay, but these particular ones I'm showing you, as you can see, the numbers get a little bit better. Yeah, you might find the regular Afterlife with Archie number 6, and it could still get you 10 bucks. But here we're talking 20 to 50. But with that, that was issue 5. Issue 6, the variants. Next up, we have number 7, which, once again, you got the zombie action. You got the, the 90s, if you will. It's like the 80s. It's like the 80s horror movies of old. So that's kind of the inspiration behind these. So you can see why they do well. This one in particular is 20 to 30 bucks as far as average sales go. And listings could be a bit more. Still looking for 20 on the low end, but 80 on the high end. Again, asking prices. That's what they're listed for. And when I'm giving you these averages, once again, remember, there's outliers on both sides. Yes, you might find a cheaper one that's all banged up for less. Or you might find one listed for over $100 because they're out there. Those are out there too. I'm just giving you the kind of general range of what I normally see as far as copies listed go. So 20 to 80 on that number 7. So once again, another issue to keep an eye out for. As we get near the end here, we're going to go on to the next issue here, which is number 8. And no cheesecake to be had here. This is just the only cover, and this is the regular cover, only cover for issue 8. Francavilla did this, but it's still pretty cool. So I kind of want to still call this out, even if it didn't have a cheesecake type of cover or a Gooner cover, as you guys like to say these days. But yeah, something to be aware of. Why? Well, this one's tricky because I saw a listing sell for $150. That was the only one I could find that sold in the last 3 months. $150. Had to look into it. It looks like it fell through, though. So there's another listing still looking for that $150 because it looks like the sale fell through on the first one. Why is this $150? Well, I don't know. But like I said, it's the only one I can find out there. So I guess somebody's going fishing and maybe they get it. I don't know. Point being, just throwing this out there. So this one, I have no idea what the market is or should be on it because all I got to work with the last 3 months is a $150 copy that looks like sale fell through and got relisted. So it is what it is. But as I mentioned, as we get near the end, these are not the easiest things to find. And with that in mind, our one to watch is closer to the end of this thing. And this is number 10, which again gives us that kind of callback to Betty and Veronica here, dressed as cheerleaders with bats and a hack slash sort of vibe with all these dead zombie girls. Still kind of a fun cover. And this is the variant, the B cover to be aware of. And this thing, sales are only like $5 to $10 on this thing. Why did I find that interesting? Because while the ones that I found that actually sold were only $5 to $10, the ones that are still on the market, they're looking for 20 to 80. So where is the real market on this book? Is this really only a $5 to $10 book? Or is this a $20 to $80 book? I don't know. The market will decide. The market will will it out eventually. They'll suss it out. But those are the numbers, which I found interesting. And the discrepancy is why this one is one to watch, because I don't know where to put it. When we go off of what actually sold, this is $5 to $10. But with what's listed, maybe it could be more. Something to keep in mind on. And with that, that's all I got for you this week. So until next time, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking this out. Hopefully you're enjoying this series. I still got a couple more planned. I do got to figure out how I'm going to try to get ahead of the game when I go on my vacation soon. But I'll try to make sure to get content out to you guys if I can. And with that, I'll see you all later. All right? Take it easy.